Hello friends, today I want to talk a little bit about everything, to be honest. I'm going to call this something like a state of the channel update, a la a state of the union address, but in this case, of course, about the channel, but about booktube, book content overall. Generally, I want to talk about where I think booktube content is at. Well, not just even booktube, but also Instagram overall, just bookish content in the year of 2026, where I see my own content within that space. I want to talk about my current life situation, how that's affected my reading, and how that ties into my content or lack thereof, or how the content has been shaped recently. And then lastly, future plans. You know, what can you expect in the future? What do I plan to make in the future? Talk about all of that. As usual, I don't have any script for this video, but I do have some notes just so that I don't ramble on too long. But let's first talk about bookish content in 2026. Both on Instagram and YouTube, I don't have book talk or anything like that, so, you know, Lord knows what's on there. I feel like there's been a gradual, but now at this point, a very strong shift, favoritism towards hauls, lists, and just short form content. Here's 5 books you should read. Here's 5 French authors you need to read. Here's the best 10 books I ever read. Here's a massive book haul. Yes, I just did one of those as well. And then, you know, you have your short form content on Instagram as well. Quick takes, quick reviews of books and mentions of authors, and everything is short, right? Short form content is not new. It's been around for years, but I do feel like that just the general zeitgeist or momentum of book content is moving closer and closer towards short form content, which even in the in the medium of long form content is still shaping the direction, the tone, the topic of videos, if that makes sense. Like, I might post a 20-minute video of a book haul of top 10 books from Spanish literature or something like that, but it still has a tone of short form content, of giving you almost a summary or snippet of something that is much larger. Does that make sense? Now, why does that matter? Why do I take part in it? What can we do about it? Well, obviously, it feeds the algorithm. People want to watch videos of top blank, a bunch of new books. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's actually one thing I want to put forth, is that there's nothing wrong with list videos, with hauls, with top, any of those things. Because at the end of the day, one key foundation, I think, of the book community is that we're constantly flooding each other with recommendations. More than half of the books that I pick up in a store, I buy, I fall in love with, are recommendations from you all, from other creators, from books I stumble upon because of a video, a post, anything like that. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with those videos, but as much as you try to make them detailed, they do often fall a bit shallow. They often end up being a little bit too... I guess what I mean to say is I'm not creating something of substance. I'm not creating something or speaking about something that matters. I'm just giving you names to look up, books to buy, and it doesn't feel very interactive. It doesn't, you know, ignite my passion or curiosity or excitement. It just feels like regurgitated content, like just more and more lists and polls and all of that. And it's no secret why this content is made. It gets clicks. The algorithm loves it. People love these videos because it's honestly very entertaining to get a flood of great recommendations of, you know, new books to look at, or what did Brock buy, or what are his favorite books? What are the 5 best books that so and so read last year? Like, it's interesting content. There's, again, nothing wrong with it. But when it becomes the only content you make, then it becomes a bit banal. It becomes a bit, I don't know, just dry, lacking substance, lacking depth. And that's just not the type of channel I want to make, because I do think, again, largely the book space is very niche, unless you are focusing on the fantasy or the sci-fi and some of those larger genres that have such a large fan base. Booktube can be very niche, but I think that works in its favor as well, because the community is so close-knit, so endearing and personal, really. But when you look at the content that really kills on Bookstagram, on Booktube, it's trendy books, it's talking about the latest drama, either on BookTube or about a specific author, or God, the woke books or something like that, or stoicism or journaling, talking about Dostoevsky, or only these like big named, again, not clickbait's unfair to call these, authors that have been staples or seminal authors for centuries. But anyway, these types of videos, right, it just becomes trite to me. It becomes totally impassioned content or impassionate content, and it's not the kind of content that I want to make on a repeated basis. Again, I love lists, I love hauls, but it's not, to me, it's not sustainable, and I want to make content that's sustainable and not make dispassionate content. So what is the alternative? I've seen this discussion pop up a lot in the past few months. Are book reviews dead? Are long form book discussions, a thing of the past? Are they archaic at this point? Are they obsolete? I don't think so. I think a lot of people still yearn for those lengthy, indulgent, verbose book reviews and videos, but nevertheless, they don't get clicks. And I'm not someone that leans heavily on demographics. I, honest to God, do not care all that much about the views, because again, the BookTube space isn't very frugal, if you can't tell. So it's not like I'm dying for some sponsorship or dying to reach 20,000 subscribers or whatever. I really don't care. I do this because I love it. I do it because of the interactions, and it is a process, a rewarding process to make these videos and discuss these books at length, especially when I can't always in a real life setting or community. But those types of statistics do still drive what people generally make. And so when you put a lot of time and work and you talk, maybe you film a video for an hour, 2 hours, you edit it down. So maybe you spend 3 to 5 hours in total, especially if you prepared notes, extensive notes for the video, and you put 3-4 hours into making, let's say, a long form video about Dostoevsky's The Idiot or something like that, or Laszlo Krasznahorkai's War and War, and it only gets 300 views. It does discourage you from wanting to repeat that. I think that's just undeniable. There's some people that can overlook it, but for me personally, I think a lot of people have admitted this on BookTube. It's discouraging when you put a lot of time and effort into a video, even if it's not flashy, all the edits, just simply recording it, maybe having your notes and speaking to a camera for a long period of time. You do that and you really get no feedback, comments, likes, views, anything like that. It does discourage you from doing that again, because me, just as much as all of you, have a lot that you do on a day-to-day basis. We have a lot of responsibilities and priorities and ways we can effectively spend our time, enjoy our time, even simply spend our time reading a book, right? And so to spend those hours doing something that doesn't elicit some kind of response or pleasure, it can be discouraging. So that's the caveat with these lengthier discussion videos, and I've made them, is sometimes they don't deliver that kind of level of feedback that you would need to continue making them, at least on like a regular basis. So that's why those list videos are a little bit easier, because I can talk about a book extemporaneously for 3 to 5, 6 minutes on each book, either in a haul, a list video. But for me to properly make a video that I'm proud of, and that's, again, something I'll get to in a moment, a video that I'm proud of, it takes me a while to prepare the notes, to break down how I want to attack the book and discuss it at length. And that's the time to prepare. Then it's, an hour or so to film it. Then it's maybe another, 30 to 2 hours, something like that, to edit it. For example, the video I posted last January actually, on Laszlo Krasznahorkai's Apocalypse Quartet. That video probably all in all took me like 9 or 10 hours, because I wrote the piece on my Substack. I think that took me like 5 or 6 hours, maybe a smidge more, to edit it. Then the video itself, maybe an hour, hour and a half, 2-ish hours, 2.5 hours to edit it, and maybe some other time here or there. That's a lot of time to put into what I think ended up being like a 19-minute video. And at the time, it didn't perform as well. After he won the Nobel Prize, it got a nice boost in views. But that's a video I'm very, very proud of, regardless of the views it gets, regardless of how many people read the article. So there is something still there. And that's at the end of the day, to kind of cinch this up, is I want to make videos, write articles and essays that I am proud of. I want to feed my curiosity, feed my passion. I want to create content that ignites that spark, that feeds that flame, right, that I get when I read a book and I'm like, I need to tell someone about this. I have to tell the world about this book or discuss this idea. Maybe I don't have that person in my immediate circle, but I gotta tell somebody. So I turn to BookTube, I turn to Bookstagram, and that's what makes it amazing, because we do have this, again, small niche and close-knit community. But the facts are what they are. That is where content is trending in 2026. That's where I've looked at my own YouTube and been a little bit ashamed because of how many videos in the past few months have just been lists and hauls and yeah, it's not something I'm entirely proud of, but at the same time I want to continue to make content. So that kind of leads me to the next topic I want to discuss, which is my current life situation and how my reading habits, my reading quantity has changed. So as many of you know, my wife gave birth to our beautiful son back in October, and since then life has been hectic. Not chaotic, I wouldn't fully say, but just hectic. Busy, strenuous, but rewarding. Tiring, but blissful and just immensely joyful. And like any parent, my wife and I, especially my wife, have had to sacrifice a lot, as you'd imagine, as you'd come to expect with parenting. And obviously, part of that sacrifice is the time that we have to read. It gets completely sucked out, completely reduced to a large extent because of the time we dedicate to our son. Changing him, feeding him, playing with him, taking him to appointments, the whole nine. All that gets encompassed into parenting, and it's a joyous thing. It's a rewarding thing, and we have no regrets about that at all. In fact, I think it's really heightened our sense of purpose and meaning and happiness and all of that. But it does dramatically change how much we can read, which is fine. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that as not a good or bad thing, but not ignore the fact either. I read noticeably less because I have a son now. I used to read maybe 3-ish hours a day, maybe 3.5 even. Now I read for about an hour and a half, and I'm still immensely grateful to have that time. I know that some parents have even less, and some people without kids have less. So what it's done is it's made me appreciate, cherish, and value my reading time far more. But it's also dramatically slowed down how many books I can read. Now, why that matters is it's not because I'm dying to read a number of books within a year or anything like that. I'm not trying to rush through reading or anything, but it affects the content I can make. It just does. I can't talk about my recent reads if I've only read 2 books in the past month. That's a pretty short video, especially when I'm reading chunky books, like I'm reading Stalingrad right now by Vasily Grossman and The Tunnel by William H. Gass. That's a little bit under 700-page book and then about a 1,000-page book. Those are basically the only books I've read over the past 6 weeks. And so if I want to make a video on Instagram or on YouTube about the books I've read, or maybe make a list video or something like that, I need to read more so that I can talk about more, if that makes sense. And I could talk about books from the past, but then I feel like I'm doing list content again. I'm regurgitating old stuff. So both my wife and I, because if you don't know, my wife also has a BookTube channel, both of us have felt like we've had to kind of recalibrate, so to speak, and rethink about our book content, because we used to have a nice blend of, I think, reading vlogs and recent reads and TBRs and all that. But now our TBR is about 40 to 50% of what it was. We don't read nearly as often, so the reading vlogs are, just us sitting on the couch in between our son's naps trying to read, or I'm, getting some time in the morning to read before my son and wife wake up. And so it doesn't make for visually appealing content. It doesn't make for kind of extensive or long-winded content. And so that's just something that both my wife and I have had to kind of adjust since our son's birth, is just how does this impact our content? So this, paired with my trepidations about hauls or trendy content, has just made it difficult for me to kind of assess where I am at as I don't want to just use the blanketed term as a content creator, but that's what this is. You know, you can call it a writer, a creator, whatever it is. It's made me reassess the kind of content I want to make, what content I actually can make with my reading behavior and my reading quantity and pace and all that. And then the last thing I'll kind of tie into how my reading habits and choices have changed as well is I tried to make a more extensive effort this year to do a lot more book reviewing. Last year, I reviewed several books for different publishers that I really love. And this year, I wanted to make an even more extensive effort. Not just post stuff on my personal page and Substack, but also land a few either paid or free reviews on other publications. And two things about that. One, it's not quite gone to plan just because, again, my reading pace has been even a smidge lower than I was anticipating it was going to drop off, pace-wise. And then the other component of it is between my book club and having these reviews that I feel responsible to read the book on time, write the review, all of that. It's really confined me or restrained the kinds of books I can read. Now, I'm choosing books in the book club. I'm choosing, requesting books for review that I want to read. So it's not like I'm being forced to read books I don't want to read. Don't get me wrong here. I'm excited to read them. But, I think all of us like to be a little bit of a mood reader. We like to kind of switch things up. Sometimes a book jumps the queue, or sometimes, I'm tired of reading about a lot of depressing moments of world history. Let me just read something fun, But when I have a deadline to reach, or I'm sharing, this experience with the book club, and I'm writing these weekly review or analysis and commentary, I owe something to those members. I owe something to this publisher or whatever. And so, if I'm only reading 40 books in a year, and let's say 7 or 8 of those are for the book club, let's say another 8 or 10 or something for reviews, it starts to narrow some of that freedom or options and things like that. So that's something I'm also kind of recalibrating and thinking about towards the rest of this year, heading into 2027, already thinking about like how many books do I really want to review? How do I want to kind of shape my year of reading, basically? And just keeping some of that in mind, because I do like to have a bit more flexibility and latitude within my reading. But because sometimes, again, between my son, between life, work, stress, it's difficult. And sometimes, your mind isn't ready for some extremely experimental or strenuous book like Krasnohorkai, or, when I tried to read Pynchon's book, The Shadow Ticket, days after my son was born, and it was just too much. I needed something simpler. So, those are things that come to mind as well. So where does this leave us? What content is Brock going to make in the rest of 2026 and for the foreseeable future? It kind of depends, to be honest. I will say, regardless of the likes and comments and views, I would like to get back into some longer form, I don't want to call them book reviews, but we just call them book discussions or analyses. I've done several of them on the channel on The Idiot, or like I mentioned, the Apocalypse Quartet from Krasnohorkai, or I think I did one on Gravity's Rainbow and some of these other different books. I did one most recently last year on Demons by Dostoevsky, because I do them every month for the book club, but I'd like to share more of them, maybe a little bit shorter here on YouTube for all of you. And so I would like to get back to doing some of those. Again, the frequency of those really depends on how many books I can even fit in, right? So that's also going to be a challenge, as I mentioned. But I would like to get back to some of those. And the other thing, too, is I have plans for larger reading projects. I really don't want to spoil them because they probably are a full year, maybe even more out. But there's something that, regardless of what's trendy or what's going on, they're just larger reading projects that I want to devote time to and make maybe multiple videos about, maybe make a series about. I'm really excited about them. I have ideas both on a visual aspect and the actual content itself for it that I think will be really cool down the line. But there's a few things with that. I need a space. My wife and I are still in this, we can call it unstable situation right now, where we've been trying to sell our home. The market in Colorado is extremely slow, at least in our price range and things like that. So now we're in a process of trying to set it up for rent so that we can make the purchase and move that we intended to before our son's birth. And so it's just been a hectic situation in our life overall in multiple ways. And so like the majority of our books are still in storage. We don't really have full control of our space. We're still living with family, and they're extremely helpful and supportive, and have blessed us with the space to be here and to make as much of the space of our own as we can. But for certain things and certain content that I'd like to make, I do want to kind of hold off until I have more control, if that makes sense. And then besides the larger projects and the book reviews, I kind of would like to just make more videos maybe like this, sitting down talking about literary topics, maybe talking about some of these authors or books, but more in like a more I don't know, relaxed or casual setting. It doesn't have to be so analytical or by the book or chopped up, things like that. I don't know. Let me know. Honestly, this video isn't a large part an update, but it's also a bit of a survey or a question out there for you all. What do you want to see from me? What type of content would you like to see on this channel? What kind of stuff would you like to hear from me about? Whether it's language related, more book tags, or I don't know, whatever comes to mind. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on any of this rambling I just threw out here at you, and what you'd like to see in the channel in the future. But I think I'll wrap it up here. As always, I'm immensely grateful for the support. I look forward to making more content on this channel, so you can bet on that. And yeah, as always, subscribe for more content, like the video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next one.